Welcome back, everyone. I'm Fernando Geronimo. I'm your host of Sports Time HQ. Joined with me today is not Keith, my co-host, but a great guest star, Mr. Gary Dombeck. Gary, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good tonight. How's everybody doing tonight? How we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Maybe not so good after the Patriots lost, but I know you're doing a lot better with your Browns win victory over the Cardinals, right?
Yeah, they looked great, honestly. But again, it is the Cardinals. I kind of expected what happened. I was kind of hoping that Deshaun could look better in some moments, but as a whole, the team looked pretty good.
Now, of course, you got a tough division with the Bengals, with the Steelers, with the Ravens. Do you think your Browns are going to be able to make the playoffs?
I think that we can sneak in. It's of course going to be hard. Every game is like a must win, pretty much, especially going into Baltimore this upcoming week. I'm just hoping that our guys can be prepared to, get a gritty, grimy win. We gotta take them where we can get them. Our defense is good enough. Our defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense, and I think everybody knows that. It's just, can Deshaun be what we brought him into this offense to be? And if so, then yeah, I can 100% see us getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, you guys right now technically sit, I think, the seventh seed or maybe the sixth seed into the playoffs
I
because
believe we're the sixth seed.
everyone in the AFC North makes the playoffs if the season ended today. I mean, the last place team, the Bengals, are 5-3. You guys also are tied with the Bengals, so is the Steelers. So there's a chance for your team to make it. It's just
There is.
whether or not Watson can stay healthy as well.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Especially, I mean, these past couple weeks have just been horrible to watch as a Browns fan. PJ Walker was able to just get us by in the games against the Niners, in the game against the Colts. But there was another game, the Seahawks. We should have won that one. If some things went our way, Kevin Stefanski made a better play call going for it on third. It was 3rd and 3. He drew up a stupid pass play, in my opinion. He should have just ran the ball. We were at like the 50. If we don't get it, punt it, pin him. If we do get it, game over. But we went for a throw, got picked, and took a loss for that week. But I mean, it happens. We just, again, we do have to hope and pray that Deshaun can stay healthy, and hopefully he leads us to where we need to be.
Two of your losses were 4-point losses. Like you guys lost by 4 points. Your next game being the Ravens. I just want to ask, you're in Baltimore. Do you think your team can win?
I do. Like I said, I mean, these AFC North games are going to all be tough. It's not just the fact that people are saying, oh, they're going to be tough for the Browns. No, it's going to be tough for every team in this division. If you look at the game that we played in Cleveland, I believe week 3 or 4, maybe, I don't exactly remember. Deshaun wasn't playing. We had the rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson, everybody's favorite preseason quarterback for some reason, playing that game, and he just didn't do what people thought he would. I would have loved to see PJ Walker in that game. I don't think we would have won it. We got blown out. But at the same time, the defense was on the field for like 68% of that game. I mean, I don't care what team you are. I don't care how good your defense is. They're going to be drained and tired that entire game, and nothing is going to come good out of that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Browns 5-3, so you guys have a good chance. The only team between us two that has a chance to make playoffs, because obviously the Patriots, they currently sit 2-7. And I don't know if you saw all the rumors that came out today, but Bill Belichick, the top head coach on the hot seat, and rumors has that Robert Kraft is willing to move on from him if they lose to the Colts in the Germany game next weekend.
Yeah, no, I did see that. And to be honest, of course, I'm not a Patriots fan, but being around in the New England area, uh, I'm surrounded by Patriots fans. But me personally, I just don't know how you can do that to Bill Belichick. I completely understand that they're on a losing skid right now, but I mean, this guy is arguably the best head coach of all time.
You don't think Tom Brady made him the best?
He could have, but I don't know. The thing with Bill Belichick is that everybody knows that he swings and misses in the draft, and that's like his biggest problem. Other than that, he's, like I said, arguably the greatest coach of all time. Maybe he needs to be stripped of his GM duties, because that's also what he does. So if he is stripped of his GM capabilities, I think that they will be perfectly fine with Bill Belichick as a head coach. They just need to hit in the draft, and they haven't been able to do that with Bill Belichick making calling the shots, and that's I think all they need.
Yeah, of course, 2-7. Maybe we're tanking for another quarterback because clearly Mac Jones is not the answer. Obviously, the next game, as we already mentioned, the Colts. They have an opportunity to bring back their record to basically be 4-7 in the next 2 weeks. They have a chance to beat the Colts because I think that's a winnable game for them. And they also have the Giants, who will go right into our injuries with Daniel Jones. He's out for the season. You pay him so much money. He faced injuries earlier. He's back. Then he tears his ACL, officially out for the season. I mean, why? Why did you pay Daniel Jones so much money? Why? You knew he wasn't that good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I when I saw that contract the day that it dropped, I was like, this is the biggest robbery in history, possibly ahead of Deshaun Watson's contract. But yeah, no, this contract was not good whatsoever. I did not like it. I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones guy at all. Um, I just don't think he's very good, and I think that a lot of people know that, especially Giants fans. And all he really has is a rushing upside, and he can check it down a little bit. I think any quarterback can do that. And again, I don't remember exactly how much it was. Was it like 40 million a year, 38, something like that?
It was something way up there. It was
Something
nuts.
way up there like that. And no one of Daniel Jones' caliber should be getting that much money. And yeah, I hate to see any player get hurt. Doesn't matter who it is. And that just puts the Giants in even a worse spot than they were to begin with. So
Yeah, because not only that, but Tyrod Taylor's also facing injury. So they got to go to DeVito, who's their rookie. And I think they also just signed Jacob Eason as a backup. So those two are not going to be the answer if the Giants are trying to somehow make playoffs. But obviously, based on their record from last year to this year, completely different record and storyline, personally. So Giants, they had a good year, good run last year. Dan Jones got paid. That's what he wanted. Now he can just ride the bench and enjoy his injury, right?
right. Yeah, no, I agree. Tommy DeVito obviously isn't gonna get it done. And for them to even make playoffs, they'd have to probably win out. I believe they sit at 2-7 right now. Almost statistically impossible to get into the playoffs. And again, like you said, a significant drop off from where they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants, yeah, they had a nice Cinderella run. They beat the Vikings in the playoffs last year. I don't know how they did it, but they did. And then they kind of came back down to earth and they got waxed by the Eagles. And I feel like after that, that's just kind of where they are right now. And we'll see what happens in the offseason for the Giants. They're going to need a lot of work. So
Yeah, they're going to need to find some answers in the offense, especially. Another player that also had an injury was Cam Akers. He tore his Achilles. He had a torn Achilles already in the past. I mean, running backs are just so hard to come back from with torn Achilles. He showed some signs of life in coming back from it, but now he tears it again. And to me, I think that just shows that I think personally, and it's sad to say that Cam Akers' career in the NFL is most likely done.
yeah, it's very possible. And that's definitely a sad thing to see. I definitely think that he showed flashes in LA and especially in his small time in Minnesota. He had a lot of the workload actually when he came in, and that was surprising to me because when I saw him in LA, a majority of the time he was not this guy that you would expect
Yeah.
to handle a majority of the workload, especially seeing that they also have Alexander Madison in that backfield, which I thought was going to be a very good fantasy running back this year.
Dud.
I drafted him in one of my leagues. I will not lie. He had a great week last week, but again, yeah, back to Cam Akers. It sucks. It really does. And I agree that that could very well be the last time that he steps on a football field, and that's sad to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally he's got to take some time to really recover, really make sure that his Achilles is 100% back to normal. But yeah, Cam Akers' career most likely done in the NFL. Maybe he'll serve as a backup, third string type of guy, like or even fourth string practice squad type of guy. But he's not going to be the next best running back. And we already know how running backs are in the NFL. They're on the chopping block every day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So someone else I just want to quickly mention is have you been seeing the Aaron Rodgers news? Is he coming back? Is he just somehow coming back? Like, I don't understand how a guy can tear his Achilles and somehow magically come back right away.
Yeah. No, it's insane to me as well. I mean, especially at the age of whatever he is. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't know off the top of my head, but he's old. And the fact that there's this narrative that he's gonna come back in whatever it is, like second to last week of the year or whatever. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
remember what they said, but that makes me baffled. I'm seriously confused as to how that could possibly happen. But if it does, this guy is superhuman. I mean, we see what he does on the field. He is, in my opinion, unless Mahomes can pass him, I think Rodgers is the most talented quarterback of all time. And he's just a game changer. He is. Everybody loves watching him play. You could say what you want about his character, but the way he plays the game of football is unbelievable. And again, if he makes it back to this season off of Achilles tendon rupture at the age of whatever, then he is just unbelievable.
Not to mention, Jets currently sit 4-4, and realistically, they're only about a game behind to making the playoffs. So, if Zach Wilson can be that guy that can push them towards the playoffs, and Aaron Rodgers comes back, I mean, it's just a magical season for the Jets. But when does the Jets actually have something go their way? Never. So I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked to see if that Cinderella story can happen for them. But it'd be one heck of a story for Rodgers and coming back.
Yeah, no, it would. I have one of my friends is a Jets fan, and I felt bad for him seeing Rodgers go down because, like you said, nothing good ever comes for the Jets. And here they are thinking we're only a QB away, and they really were. And especially in the offseason, I thought once they got Rodgers, they're going to the playoffs and maybe they can make some noise. And then you see him go down only a few plays into the first game of the season, and it's like, geez, that just sucks. It does. And
Yeah.
especially, I'm not in the same situation, but as a Browns fan, I mean, I felt that as well. You know, we have one of the most stacked rosters in the league, I personally believe. And with our quarterback play, that's really the only thing that's been setting us back. And I, of course, have Deshaun Watson that's still playing. He's not done for the year exactly, but I think that I can personally feel some sort of sorrow for these Jets fans because it really does suck
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you might have a shot this year and then it just gets taken out from under you in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, and 4 snaps for
Yeah,
Rodgers.
right.
But that's pretty much it for the injuries, major injuries, anyways. We'll get into our fantasy waiver wire ads of the week. Just before we get into that, of course, if you haven't done so already, go to trophysmack.com and purchase a trophy, ring, or a belt. Obviously, the NHL season and the NBA season, they're officially started. If you got fantasy teams for that, go get yourself a trophy or a ring or a belt for the winner of that fantasy team. And as well, if you haven't done so, go download Underdog Fantasy. Use code SportsTimeHQ. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. But Gary, it's time to get into our waiver wire quarterbacks. Who are you howling at everyone to get for this week?
Yeah, so here's a guy that I'm not really the biggest fan of, but I can't lie, his numbers are there. Sam Howell. He's only 61.7% owned in ESPN leagues. He had a solid week against New England last week, putting up 17 and a half. He played pretty well, 325, only one touchdown. He had a pick, 5 rushing attempts for 27 yards. But when you look at his past 2 games, he's throwing for 361 and 2.5 touchdowns. I mean, those are really solid numbers for a guy that you probably wouldn't expect to do that. He heads to Seattle next week, and I think that could be possibly another big performance for him. Seattle's defense probably sits around middle of the pack, and I think that if Washington really wants to win that game, they're going to have to throw the ball. And like I said, I think that is a perfect matchup for Sam Howell. He currently sits at quarterback 7, which is actually eye-popping to me because, again, I just don't think that Sam Howell is really a guy that you would expect to be putting up these numbers week by week.
Yeah, I know. I like how a lot. Actually, co-host Keith actually talked about him last week, and the fact that he's still under 70% owned is mind-boggling to me because I mean he's constantly being talked about in our shows every week, and the fact that he's putting up numbers, the fact that he's quarterback 7, like you just mentioned, being a top 10 or even top 7 quarterback, most leagues at the very minimum are most likely 18 leagues, but on average 10, 12 team leagues. And if he's sitting in the waivers, that's a problem because clearly you have someone like maybe Trevor Lawrence who's outside the top 12 or Justin Fields who's gotten hurt over the past couple weeks. I mean, you have these players that aren't producing, but they're big names. I think people are just really stuck up on the name versus the talent, the potential of these players. So I like how a lot. But
Yeah,
for me, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I was just gonna say I like that you mentioned Trevor Lawrence because I was really big on him this year. Um, Ohio State fan right here, and I'm not the biggest fan of T Law, but this year I thought he gets Calvin Ridley. He got a good back in ETN. I like the Jaguars as a team. Give me T Law this year. I think that he's great for what his value
Yeah.
was. I don't remember exactly what round he was going, but and I think that I wasn't alone in that narrative that Trevor Lawrence is going to have a big year. I picked him in a lot of my leagues, and to be honest, he just has not held to the standard that I thought he would be and I want him to be. So I have looked at the waiver wire and if Sam Howell is available, I have definitely picked him up and plugged him in for a week or two just to get me what Trevor Lawrence hasn't been able to do.
Yeah, I mean, I have Lawrence in one of my leagues, and I mean, he's just not producing. So I ended up actually going to pick up Kirk Cousins. Then he got an injury, but then I ended up going to get Sam Howell off the waivers, and it works out because now I got a top 7 quarterback, and I can move on and trade him if I want if Lawrence starts to do good. But at the moment, we're going to stick with 2 quarterbacks for a 1 quarterback league because these quarterbacks are brutal out there.
Right.
But my guy I want to talk to, he's kind of had just a magical season himself. He kind of reminds me of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type player that consistently moving teams, but consistently being relevant. It's Mr. Joshua Dobbs. I mean, 1 week after getting traded, he ends up being backup for the Vikings, and then Jaren Hall ends up getting a concussion early in the game. Joshua Dobbs comes in, and he doesn't disappoint. I mean, he only missed 10 of his 30 passes. Didn't have that many yards, 158 yards, but he did have 2 passing touchdowns. Not only that, he did scramble out of the pocket and rushed for 66 yards for 1 touchdown. And he also ended up having a game-winning drive. 3rd straight game with a rushing touchdown for him. 24 plus points in the last 2 weeks. Currently sitting as the quarterback 10 in fantasy, which also is mind-boggling. But Justin Jefferson, his IR window is open. So he's coming back from the injury reserve within the next 21 days. Once Jefferson gets back, sky's the limit for Joshua Dobbs. I mean, he should be consistently putting up what Kirk Cousins was putting up in numbers. Mind you, Dobbs is not as good as Kirk Cousins, but Dobbs still has potential to be putting up fantasy numbers that Kirk Cousins did. So personally, Dobbs, who sits currently only 19.2% rostered in sleeper leagues, he needs to be added everywhere.
Yeah, AFC North fans, stand up. We love Josh Dobbs over here in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I mean, this guy, like you said, he's bounced around the league, and players or people that are fans of teams that he's played for knows that he can fill in a role if you need him to. And I think that we saw that this year in Arizona, and we saw it last week in Minnesota. And I completely agree with you. Of course, he's not the quarterback that Kirk Cousins is, but especially with Jetta's coming back this week or whenever he comes back, he can definitely put up those numbers that Kirk Cousins did. I completely agree with you. This is a great pick.
Joshua Dobbs and Sam Howell, both Gary and I's top waiver wire ads of the week for quarterback. Some other ones I just kind of want to run through the list of top 4 anyways. Deshaun Watson, 19 points. He's still under 70% owned. If he can still stay to his former Texan potential and what we've seen him do in Houston before, if he keeps putting up these consistent numbers, we can see some more progress in him, and he'll be way over 70% in the future. Some other ones, Taylor Heineke, Baker Mayfield, some options to stream if you got some bye weeks, big bye weeks, of course, with Miami, Philadelphia, some other ones, Kansas City, and then the Rams as well. And then lastly, Kyler Murray, PUP list. He's bound to come off it this week. And it looks like he's getting the start this week too, which is going to be very interesting to see. He's almost over 70% owned. So if you do have a chance to get a quarterback, this could be your last week to get Kyler Murray before sky's the limit for him. So,
Yeah, and
any of them you like the most?
Yeah, I think Kyler's a great one because he has actually, believe it or not, some good talent around him. I really like Marquise Brown this year. I got him in a good amount of my leagues, and even Michael Wilson. I know he was hurt this week. I'm not too sure what the timeline is for him to come back, but he showed some flashes as well of being a good, reliable receiver. And I think with those two guys around him, of course, again, you don't think the Cardinals are going to really do anything, but Kyler Murray, we know what he can do. So if he's really a guy that you need, plug him in there.
Yeah, I love it a lot. I mean, he's in a couple of my dynasty leagues, and he's been basically just a hold and stash in your leagues for dynasty anyways. You don't want to trade him because his stock is low right now. But, I mean, he's got the potential. He's got talent around him. He's got a good, solid tight end, Trey McBride, that rookie or former rookie. So there's potential there. And whether or not they're going to get some wins is still a question because their team is still not that good. But hey, if he shows that he can be a proven quarterback, then I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback in the offseason and move away from him. So that's my thought on him. But obviously that's our quarterbacks. Let's go to our running backs. And I'll start with my guy here. It's Chuba Hubbard. And the running backs are thin. It's thin every week now. And the running backs are just all over the place this year. I mean, it's just, they're on chopping blocks. It's starting to become committees. It's just, they're all over the place. Hubbard, he's right on the cusp of getting 70% owned. He's 69.9% owned. Didn't have the best week, but also still produced, though. 58 rushing yards on the ground. He had 6 targets, 4 receptions for 9 yards. Finished the day with 10.7 points. Good flex play, in my opinion. It's a good floor option for a flex, but this is now 3 straight weeks. He's had 15 plus attempts. He looks like he's the main guy moving forward in Carolina. My only concern is Carolina is going to always be down. That's the problem. But that means he's also going to get targets because you saw those 6 targets. That means he's the check down running back over Miles Sanders. I think Chuba has won the job over Miles Sanders, and I think you can get yourself a running back one on that team to be your flex play.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. Like you said, the wire for running backs is thin right now, and that's why you see a lot of these guys that aren't going to be producing very much. But I think that 10.7 was that what he had this week?
Yeah, 10.7. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's coming off the waiver wire again for a really thin position in the NFL is fine with me. And if you got multiple guys on buys that you just need a plug in and flex, that's I think a great option. And that's why I'm gonna go into my guy who is Khalil Herbert. He's coming off the IR, and the Bears aren't very good, but he showed flashes early in the season when he played. He had 54 yards per game, and he had possible receiving upside. There were a couple of games where he had 2 or 3 catches apiece. Again, he returns from the IR this week, and I think that his upcoming matchup versus Carolina is pretty good. Carolina has let up, I believe, the 31st most points to running backs in the entire NFL. So who knows? Maybe they're slow with getting him back, but Khalil Herbert showed flashes when he was healthy, and if you need a flex guy, he can be that, just like Chuba Hubbard.
I actually like Herbert a lot coming into the season. Obviously, I thought he would be the RB1 there. My only concern with him now is obviously he had that injury. He was out for some time. Who's the running back there when he does come back? Is he going to be that main guy? Because when he was gone, we saw Roshan get snaps. We saw Deonta Foreman get snaps. Darrington Evan. I mean, it was all over the place, that running back field. Does Khalil Herbert help the team? I think so. And do they have a chance to really flip their season around when Justin Fields also comes back and healthy? I don't know. But the question is Herbert going to be that main running back, or are they going to stick to a running back by committee? I like your pick here because there's potential here with Herbert because we've seen his potential in the past. I just don't know if he's going to be used enough anymore now being back from the injury. But I think he's a good streaming option for me. And he kind of gives me Bijan Robinson vibes because of the fact that he can sometimes get playing time and then sometimes he won't, depending on the running back by committee. But Bijan's another story because Bijan is just Bijan, and he should be an RB1 and he's an RB25. So yeah, that's my story, my little story. But I like Herbert. I think he's got potential. I really hope he does come back and be that number one guy for that backfield. I'm just concerned whether or not it's going to be a committee, but hopefully Herbert is the guy for the rest of the season anyways. But some alternate waiver options, obviously Chuba Hubbard and Khalil Herbert, Gary and I's top 2 picks for running back. For the running backs, again, I mentioned how thin it is. It's Keontae Mitchell, who is the running back for the Ravens. He scored 20.4 points, and Gus the Bus Edwards is also there. So it's the question, are they going to flip it back around? I mean, it's all over the place. But he's a good streaming option. Tyler Algier, another one, because he clearly is the main guy in Atlanta, even though it should be Bijan, like we've already mentioned. Antonio Gibson, another flyer. And then I mentioned Ty Chandler. And the reason why I mentioned him, Gary, I don't even know if you know who this guy is, but Ty Chandler, the third string, are now going to be the backup for Alexander Madison. We've seen Alexander Madison not really produce this season. And with Cam Akers now out for the year, the question goes and falls, who's their backup? And right now it's Ty Chandler. And he's only 4% owned. He scored your donut this week, obviously, probably because you didn't start him anyways either. But it looks like he's going to be the main backup for Alexander Madison. And he's the biggest guy on this 4 running backs that I'm really eyeing this week to see, does he get more snaps? Does he get more snaps in the practice? If he does, he's going to be that main guy behind Alexander Madison. And we could see some potential for him.
Yeah, I did hear about Ty Chandler, and he put up a goose egg, but again, when going into the week, you're the running back 3. I'm not really expecting you to do much.
Yeah.
4% owned, like you had mentioned, that will probably go up a little bit. If you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel for a guy that maybe can get some touches here and there. I mean, we saw what Cam Akers did. Of course, probably the Viking staff aren't going to say, he's a Cam Akers guy that can fill this role.
Yeah.
But he's their RB2. Who knows? Again, if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, take a shot.
Yeah, worth a shot, especially in very deep format leagues. I mean, he's an easy one to go pick up because if he's only 4% owned, there's a chance that he could be out there. And if it's really deep leagues like our All Talk Sports 32-team league, he could be out there and he could be benefiting you on the bench as well.
Yep.
So those are our waiver wire running backs. Let's go into our waiver wire wide receivers. Gary, I'll start with you. I mean, this wide receiver, he's a rookie, and he tanked it for a long time in the draft. But I want to hear your input on this guy because I think he's a very especially talented wide receiver.
Yeah, he did tank in the draft a little bit. And my guy is going to be Tank Dell, coming out of the University of Houston and also the Houston Texans. I love him. I really do. He's only 60.5% owned. He went off against the Buccaneers, scoring just under 30 points. He had 6 receptions for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. CJ Stroud loves this guy. He does. He's giving him more targets than he ever has. For a wide receiver, 15 targets in the past 2 weeks, I'd say that's pretty good. And, he's got the home run capability. We saw him weeks ago get, I believe, like a 69-yard touchdown. I don't remember exactly who they were playing in that game, but he does have that home run capability. He's really fast, and CJ Stroud loves him.
No, I love that pick 100%. I mean, Tank Dell, he is great. And Tank Dell, he has an opportunity. I mean, the guy knows how good – we know how good he is. We know his potential. And you mentioned how CJ Stroud loves him. And that just means that the Dell and Stroud connection is going to keep going throughout the season. So I love Tank Dell a lot. And I really like the Houston Texans. I really like them. I really like Stroud. I think he's the best quarterback in this rookie draft. And I think he's going to continue breaking rookie numbers personally. And I think he wins Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
my opinion.
I like that as well. Of course, again, I've mentioned many times before, big Ohio State guy over here. I was praying that someone could end this Ohio State quarterback narrative. And I think that CJ Stroud is doing it exactly what I wanted him to. And I mean, what he just did last week, against the
Nuts.
Buccaneers, whatever it was, 470 for like 5 touchdowns. That's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And I think he broke, I don't remember who it was, maybe Drew Brees' quarterback record for most passing yards in a game. It might not have been Drew Brees. I don't really remember, but he broke it. That's all that matters. That's his second rookie record, I believe. And I completely agree with you. He's going to smash a couple more. And I do believe and I hope that he wins Rookie of the Year. I also like the Texans. I had them coming into the season being the second seed in the AFC South, and I stood on it. I did. And
Wow.
so far, yep, so far it looks pretty good. So
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, okay. I like that a lot. Yeah, Stroud, I mean, not to mention Stroud being a rookie, having to face already trying to come back in a game. I mean, he came back in with what, 46 seconds left to win that game. It just knows how much he can not only be a game clutching quarterback, but a future Hall of Famer, future star, future everything for Houston. It's bright down in Houston.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about my guy a little bit. And I mentioned him last week. You howled for his quarterback, and it's because he's been dotting this guy up. It's Jahan Dotson. I mean, coming into the season, people wanted him to break out. The question was, can Sam Howell make Jahan Dotson break out? Well, in the last couple of weeks, he has 68% owned. So we're not going to be talking about him next week for sure. But he had an 8-4, 69, one touchdown stat line. I mean, 16.9 points. He's now had 26 targets in the last 2 weeks. One week he had double-digit targets. He's a top 10 wide receiver in these last 2 weeks, scoring 16 plus points in those 2 weeks. Dotson's showing off his talent, and he's going against Seattle, who doesn't have not really the best, but kind of middle of the pack type of receiving option for defense. And I think Dotson, again, is going to have another great game, and you're going to see him be another solid wide receiver 2 or high-end upside, low-end upside, wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I really love this pick. I'm a Jahan Dotson fan. I liked him coming out of Penn State. Just really speedy and can go up and get the ball. Reminds me of his running mate, Terry McLaurin. He really does. He's got home run potential. He can go up and get the ball. He's got great hands. I really, really like Jahan Dotson. And what kind of makes me a little bit nervous about Jahan Dotson is what we see with Terry McLaurin and the fact that the Commanders historically the past couple of years have loved to just share the ball with anybody. I mean, you could have either Dotson or McLaurin or even Samuel the past couple of years to go off for like 25 points for a stretch of games and then just randomly drop duds like back-to-back weeks. That's my only thing. But again, it's the same thing with Terry McLaurin, and people have no hesitation in drafting him. I really like Jahan Dotson. So, yeah, I like this.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, I'm concerned too with that Washington offense because I feel like not every week Howell can be thrown to every single guy. But
Right.
you're kind of seeing a little bit of consistency because not only is he throwing it to every single guy, they're getting fantasy relevant numbers like Logan Thomas getting numbers, Jahan Dotson, obviously, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, obviously he was out, but Jameson Crowder got some points as well. And then you got the running backs who are still included with Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. So he's spreading the ball a lot. And if he can consistently do that and not find that one person he wants to always target, then this team's got some good flex options all around and good positional players as well. So obviously Tank Dell, Jahan Dotson, Gary Nyes, wide receiver options, and some alternate wide receiver options, good streaming options as well. I'm going to start with Demario Douglas from the New England Patriots. Obviously, we saw Kendrick Bourne out for the season after last week's game. This week, Demario Douglas got double-digit points, 10.5 points. So I like him a lot. It's the only question is the quarterback. Mac Jones is not the guy. And does he go consistently with Douglas? We don't know that yet. But it's going to be interesting to see going on future games throughout the season. Some other ones, Odell Beckham, obviously in Baltimore. I mean, he's getting some relevancy. Kind of a good streaming option as well, though. Wan'Dale Robinson, guy to keep an eye on with the quarterback situation with Taylor and DeVito. And then Noah Brown, of course, 27.3 points. The other guy in Houston who ended up only having 3.6% owned, and he still popped off. So, Gary, I don't know if you have any of these guys that you look to be liking a lot in your streaming options.
Yeah, I actually like Demario Douglas a lot. When I watched the Patriots, I always see him getting good contribution numbers. I think that Mac Jones really relies on him to be there. He's really speedy. He's a small guy, but he gets the job done. I really like him. He's a rookie this year, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So um, he's not in the best scenario right now, of course, with Mac Jones at quarterback, but who knows? I think that he could actually be a pretty good receiver in this league. I like him a lot. So if he's out there, you see the number, he's only about 45% owned. Go get him. Take a shot.
Yeah, I'd like that a lot. Those are some other alternate waiver wire wide receiver options. Now it's time to go to the final position, the tight end position. Let's get the deathbed out because this position is always the worst position to talk about. Because you never know. You never know. These tight ends, the floor or a good week for a tight end is on average about 8 points. And I hate to say it because, you got Travis Kelce who sometimes scores you 25 points a week, or you just have him scoring a dud when Taylor Swift is not in the stadium. But Gary, I'll talk about your guy again. Who is your guy for the tight end option? Who are you picking up this week?
Yeah, so my player is going to be Jake Ferguson. And I looked on ESPN, and he is 59% owned. That could vary from different services, but he put up a really good game against Philly, 22.1 points. In the past couple of weeks, he's actually looked pretty good. Dak seems to just love him as a whole, as a security blanket. In his last 2 games, he's had 11 catches, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and that currently puts him at the tight end 12 spot. I think he's a great option.
Yeah, I like Jake Ferguson a lot. He's actually over 70% owned in sleeper format, so that's why I couldn't talk about him. But I've talked about him in recent weeks, and Ferguson's really good. And we know in the past that Dak Prescott likes to throw to his tight ends because we saw him throw to his tight end with Dalton Schultz in the past, which, mind you, want to throw it out there, Dalton Schultz had a great game as well, top tight end of the week. But Schultz is really good as a tight end. And when he was in Dallas, he produced as a tight end there. And Jake Ferguson is just taking that Dalton Schultz role, and he's living up the hype over there because I like Jake Ferguson, and I like this waiver wire out of the week for sure for tight ends. For my guy, though, here's the problem with my guy. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. You don't know what you're going to get out of him. You could easily see him be scoring 20, 25, maybe 30 points. And then there's other weeks you can see him post a dud and a big donut. And then he just ends up not working out for your team and you get upset and then you put him back on the bench because that's just how it works. You take 1 week of a shot with him, doesn't do good. He ends up being on your bench and he scores you a bunch of points. It's Mr. Taysom Hill. But here's the different story. Taysom Hill, we've seen for 4 straight weeks now producing. 4 straight. Taysom Hill is currently the tight end 6 or better in the last 4 weeks. Not only that, in the last 3 weeks, he's been giving you at least 16 plus fantasy points, currently sitting as a tight end 9. Hear me out. This is the reason why I like him a lot here, and this is why I'm now starting to trust him. The consistency is what I like to see. I like to see that consistency. That's what you want to see. 20.62 points, that is quarterback numbers. Depending on what league format you're in, he's listed not only as a tight end, but as a quarterback as well. So if you're really struggling in quarterbacks, I mean, I think personally he's doing better. I think he's scoring more points than Trevor Lawrence. So realistically, you could put Taysom Hill in not only as a quarterback, but also tight end. And I like him a lot. And I really hope that it doesn't come back to haunt me because I just have a feeling every time, because it's happened in the past, every time I talk about Taysom Hill as my waiver wire tight end, he ends up scoring a dud the next week. Whether or not I'm a jinx, we don't know. But Taysom Hill looks to be like he has found himself a rhythm in New Orleans. And I think that's been always the opportunity that they were looking for him, finding that consistency. And it looks like he's got the consistency in the last 4 weeks. Gary, are you nervous about him or do you like him as well?
So I have 2 looks on him. So if
you're on the fence about it.
Well, not necessarily. It's the fact that if I'm a fantasy player, correct? Yeah. I love Taysom Hill. I do. But as a fan of, and especially over the past couple of years, Alvin Kamara, I hate Taysom Hill. Despise him just due to the fact that he takes away all the carries and all the receiving targets from Kamara. Kamara's playing really good this year, of course, when I have him in 0 of my leagues. But he's playing really good, finally getting the receiving role that we all know that he could have gotten. But Yeah, as a fantasy owner or player, I guess you could say, I love Taysom Hill. I think that he has the ability to put up that 20 plus point per game thing for like 3 straight weeks. Sorry. Um, but he's a guy that could give you that 20 plus points 3 straight weeks, 4 straight weeks, whatever it may be. But like you said, there's the opportunity that he
Mhm.
doesn't do that. And I actually like what you said in the fact that if you were really, really down bad in the quarterback position, that's a guy that you could plug in there.
Yeah, Taysom Hill does give off the deathbed of Alvin Kamara for sure. And then sometimes also Derek Carr, depending on if Taysom Hill ends up passing it, does not help Derek Carr. Doesn't help the receiver sometimes because Hill likes, yeah, Taysom Hill likes to rush it as well. But Taysom Hill, Jake Ferguson, our two tight end options of the week. Some other alternate options. We've already mentioned a couple of them with Logan Thomas being the number one. Logan Thomas, 7.1 points, didn't score that much, but 67% owned. He is still producing. Again, it was a question on whether Howell can pass it around. Then we got Hunter Henry, Mac Jones's favorite target, besides Kendrick Bourne, who is no longer there. 13.9 points. He did really good. He was like a tight end 3 in the first few weeks, and then he fell off the face of the earth. And then Jonnu Smith, the Cinderella season for Jonnu Smith, anyways, 21 points. I mean, Kyle Pitts, who? He's fallen into a pit, that's for sure. Jonnu Smith, 21 points. And then Cade Otton, who's been on this alternate tight end options every single week for the past like 3-4 weeks for us. Cade Otton's there again, 23 points, 9.3% owned. Who are you liking here in this one?
I think a lot of these guys. I agree with John Smith being the
I
Cinderella
love
tight end of
Jonnu.
the year. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this as a Pats fan, but it's exactly what you thought that Jonnu and or Hunter Henry or both of them could do in New England
Yeah.
when they first came there. And I don't know how he's doing it, but he's getting these long plays. He's got like 1 or 2 long plays a game that's giving him half his points, but he's also there for whoever is going to play quarterback in the Falcon. I know it was Heineke this week, and of course Ritter prior, but they both seem to like him. So I think Jonnu Smith is a good pickup as well, and I really like Cade Otton. One thing about Baker Mayfield is that he never really threw to his wide receivers, at least in his times in Cleveland. He always seemed to like to throw to his tight ends, and we're seeing flashes of that here in Tampa Bay. And yeah, I agree. Cade Otton, a good 23-point week this week. I think he can do a lot more.
Yeah, I've actually had Jonnu as my waiver wire tight end out of the week. Obviously, he's still with tight ends being all around the place. And the fact that Jonnu, I mean, he's 31% owned. And the reason why is because Kyle Pitts is there. Because Kyle Pitts is technically supposed to be the main guy there. But Arthur Smith doesn't know how to use him, Bijan, or Drake London. So, I mean, that whole Falcons crew is down the drain. But you got Jonnu, who ends up showing life throughout the whole entire season, and he's been a serviceable tight end. He's given you opportunities to beat league mates because of that tight end position. And if you started him in any of your leagues, you ended up working out because he scored you 21 points. So I like Jonnu a lot. He's my favorite guy out of this list because maybe a little biased because I've always been talking about him this whole season, but Jonnu is my guy, and Kadon has been talked about multiple times as well, and I don't need to elaborate on that either. But yeah, so those are some other tight ends to be streaming. Gary, this is obviously your first time on the pod here, but I don't actually know who. Maybe you changed it because we're mid-season, but who do you have winning the Super Bowl this year? Or who
So
was it in general?
who was it? It was the Philadelphia Eagles, and it wasn't
Hell,
that. So okay. So I last year I was a really big Eagles hater. I hated the Eagles. I was all aboard the 49ers train, and for some reason, I let the Eagles as a whole persuade me into thinking that they could really get it done. I watched the draft and I was awestruck at what they were able to do in that first round of this year's
yep.
draft. Um, and that kind of set them over the top for me. They currently sit at 8-1, but they have had these close games that just make us
The
think,
Jets.
yes, that was unbelievably bad. But even the games that they did win, like there were some games, of course, the Commanders always play them tough. So both times that
Division
they played
rivals.
them, yeah, right, exactly. And both times that they played them were close. This past game against the Cowboys, of course, was close. So they haven't really been the all-star studded team that we thought they were going to be, but they still look like a top 5 team in the league. Now, do they still remain my Super Bowl team? I really don't know. I'll be completely honest with you.
Oh,
I have not been able to think of a team that I can say I really truly
comfortably.
believe I really truly believe they're going to win the Super Bowl. There's multiple. I think that it definitely could be, and it hurts me to say as an AFC North fan, it could be the Ravens year. It really could be. Lamar looks phenomenal. I know it might sound like a hot take. It might not. I don't know, but the Ravens look really good. Their defense is phenomenal. They're 1-2 with the Browns and even Niners defense as well. They're flying around. They're unbelievable. So it really could be the Ravens year. I still like the Eagles, and of course, you got Patty Mahomes. So there's
Of
a
course,
lot of
Mr.
teams
Talented.
that I think can get it done. So I really don't know.
Okay. Well, obviously, I should tell you who mine was in beginning of the season, of course, and I was nervous about it after watching them play for the first 4 or 5 or so weeks, but it looks like their team is starting to get back together.
Mm.
And this is a team that you're probably not going to like because it's in your division, and it's Mr. Cincinnati Joe Shiesty, Mr. Joe Burrow himself, and the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they looked awful in the beginning. Was it because of the injury of Joe Burrow? I think so. But it looks like Burrow's back. It looks like he's healthy and he's back to himself. So I think I'm still going to stick with it. But obviously, like you mentioned, the other teams being really good, those are other teams that easily could make the Super Bowl. Ravens, the ones that could definitely make it. And they're a surprise team because obviously we knew they were going to make the playoffs. But whether or not they were going to have the potential to go to the Super Bowl would be the question. But I think they are talented enough this year. The only concern is, can the running back stay healthy? Can the receiver stay healthy? Can Lamar stay healthy? But yeah, Cincinnati Bengals are my team preseason, and I'm sticking with that team. And wish I was saying the Patriots.
Right. Yeah. Right.
uh, Gary, before we go, where can people follow you anywhere on social media?
Yeah, follow me on TikTok and or Instagram at the Sports Empire TV. I also want to give a shout out to my boy Cam running All Talk Sports TV over on Instagram and TikTok as well. He just hit 100K. We're both doing similar content over there. So if you're a sports fan, of course, you're watching this podcast, go give us a couple follows over there.
Of course, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to use code SportsTimeHQ on Underdog Fantasy. They will match your first deposit up to $100. So hey, go gamble responsibly. Go put in $100. You get a free $100. You can win big, become a multimillionaire. Just say I just put my name in your mouth. Like say I helped you out. But anyways, also go to trophysmack.com/SportsTimeHQ. Go purchase yourself a trophy, ring, or a belt. Obviously, the sports seasons are underway. Go get yourself the winning team in your fantasy a trophy, ring, or a belt. Or if they're the worst team in your league, go get them maybe like a poop trophy. Who knows? From Trophy Smack. Once again, trophysmack.com/SportsTimeHQ. That's going to do it here today on Sports Time HQ. I was joined by my great guest star, Gary. You can follow him, obviously, all over social media at the Sports Empire TV, and as well as him and Cam on All Talk Sports TV. I'm Fernando. I'm your host, Sports Time HQ. We will see you all next week.